When I became a Christian, I was a student. As I was growing in Christ, I had such a vision to see the book of Acts lived out, the book of Ephesians lived out, that the gospel really was the power of God to bridge barriers that split people. And New York City, where I grew up, and New York City is a divided city. And churches that I experienced once I came to Christ was all divided. So I just said, I look at the Bible, I look at what's happening, I said, God's got a heart here. So that's why New Life, that's why we started New Life. It was very intentional. People thought we were a little bit crazy because it was a scratch church plant. We didn't have many people to start with at all. But I just had such a vision and a passion to see it happen. When we started the church in 1987, we were under-equipped in a number of areas.
We had some external resources in terms of the vision, a heart for people. We knew how to teach scripture. We knew how to share our faith. We knew how to do small groups. We didn't have money and we didn't have people. We didn't have a building. And then we would also find out we didn't have the internal resources we needed.
I didn't have the leadership skills to even have a great marriage, how to set healthy boundaries, how to build a healthy community. We never were taught those kind of things. I like what Peter Wagner used to be a professor at Fuller Seminary, and I remember talking to him about the church plant, and he knew the area, and he said, what you're on is a suicide mission. I said, thank you very much.
When we first started coming, we were renting the building on a month-to-month basis. On any given Sunday, you never knew what you were walking into because there were Golden Glove bouts here, there were wrestling matches here, the Elks had their meetings here. So you could walk in and you could smell the stale beer, you could smell the urine, there were cigarette butts on the floor. It was crazy.
What was miraculous to me in the beginning was the number of young families that were willing to join us at the time. And then there were a number of young couples, married actually without children, that were willing to join us. And one of the big issues for us in the beginning was how are we going to maintain a sense of community in a place like New York City? We were intentional with these couples about let's all move into the same area and begin to plant this church with us.
When I came to New Life Fellowship 21 years ago, it didn't look like a church, a traditional church, what I was used to. However, there was this man there, just preaching his heart out. And I felt for the first time as if I have really met Christ in a very intimate and personal way. I felt that he had seen me, that he had heard me, and that he wanted to heal me. So I felt like I was home for the first time.
It was exciting in the beginning, but over time, that community would begin to have its tensions.
It was very intense. It was 70-hour weeks, but it was our whole lives. It wasn't a separation of the church and our lives. Everybody was we moved in the same area, but we were not equipped to really live in community. We had a lot of idealized ideas of church and community that were an illusion. And we didn't just pop in here for a summer and leave. We were here and we were all living together, and everyone had pretty much cashed in every nickel they had to be part of this dream. And so we were deeply invested. Cracks began to form under the pressure. And once people started having kids and spouses and all the dynamics of that, it began to unfold over the years, and until we began to hit some crises.
For 7 or 8 years, we're planning this church and finally getting it established. It was no easy task. I mean, Pete was doing, I would say, the work of minimally 3 to 4 people. About the 7th or 8th year into it, I finally said, I can't take this anymore. I think what finally happened is that I kept pushing down a lot of feelings that I had of disappointment, anger, and then shame for even having those feelings. And I think that turned into a depression on my part. The depression enabled me to get to a place where I didn't really care what anybody thought anymore. And I said to him, Pete, This church no longer brings me life. It brings me death. I quit. I'm going to another church. I just knew we needed to figure out what we were going to do next, because a lot of lives are sort of depending on our leadership.
We realized God was calling us to lead out of our marriage. And so we took a sabbatical at that point, our first sabbatical for 4 months, to really begin to redo our lives, our rhythms, before stepping back in new life.
We realized the problems that we were having weren't out there. The problem wasn't the church. The problem wasn't New York City. The problems, we found out, were inside Pete and Geri. We learned about a whole part of ourselves that is our interior life. We really learned to be present with ourselves, be present with another human being. We were touching a piece of Christianity and spirituality that in all of our discipleship had never been touched. And remind you, we had had the best discipleship. He'd gone to the best seminaries. And yet, really, the bottom line was we really didn't know how to love well.
All of a sudden, it was like the door opened, and we began to see things so clearly about people not being, we weren't being honest with ourselves, weren't being honest with people. We were saying something was right when it really was wrong. It was so much crazy making is the word we'd use. And we came back from that first sabbatical in 1996 saying, we are going to be honest. If we do one thing, we're going to be honest with ourselves, with others, with God, and no more lying.
What happened to us was an experience of making sense of all the nonsense.
It is I was blind, but now I see. It was that dramatic that, whoa, emotional health is a missing component of how we do spirituality. And it has almost torpedoed and wrecked our marriage, our personal lives, our walk with God, our family, the church. We saw it.
And so we realized, holy smokes, this is what the church is missing. This is what we call skills in loving well. Really knowing how to listen to another person, how to really enter their world by paying attention to what's going on the inside of them. That's another whole level of Christianity that few churches know anything about. We realize we're experiencing love on a whole new level. And we're going to come back, and now we're going to begin to do what we've learned here with other people. We're going to be present with people. And so at the end of those 3 months where we were very intentional about working on ourselves personally and then our marriage, now we're ready to come back to new life. And I remember walking up the stairs that first Sunday, like holding his hand, because I realized they have no idea what's happened to us. We have changed significantly. We have had a light year learning curve. And now we're walking back into a system that has not changed, but we have changed.
I wasn't a together pastor. I was now very open about my brokenness and failure. It was very liberating.
He never spoke from above. He spoke from, a fellow traveler in, Christ. And that was very important, knowing that, I could be who I wanted to be in church. I didn't have to put on a fake smile and, put on a fancy clothes or anything. I could be who I was at New Life Fellowship.
We said to one another, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks, we're not going back. We'll never go back to living the way that we were living because we were experiencing such joy and such love. Now we're beginning to be honest in every interaction, every relationship. And what happened was actually then that gave other people permission to also be honest. But we're doing it, we're modeling it in a way that's very healthy.
Following them through that journey was really significant for me because it allowed me to see how Pete revealed himself and understood the deeper levels of emotional health. I picked up on those lessons, by seeing him in leadership, exercise some of the things he's learned, and listened to the many sermons that focused on emotional health. But yeah, no, it's very significant for us. Very significant for me because, it's very rare to have the level of insight into ourselves taught in the church, right? And so for me, that was really new.
When we have conferences now, people are trying to change their churches with emotionally healthy spirituality, and we say, the only person you can change is yourself. But if you will change yourself by God's grace, and then be that authentic person in interaction with other people, that's the key to changing really a whole community. So we just began to be our authentic selves in every relationship, and it just had this rippling effect throughout the church, and our whole community began to change.
I know at least 10 years ago, I became very intentional about, we've got to be thinking about transition here of New Life, because I was obviously the key founder, quote, charismatic figure, and I knew there wasn't a great future in that long term, that we needed to get off of that. And so we very intentionally moved to a preaching team until in 2007, I set a date with the elder board. It has been a fabulous, process. I mean, I can't imagine if we hadn't done it. It was very frightening. Would the whole place collapse? Would it work? But I realized we had to set a time and just trust God that someone else going to come and build on it and expand it and take it forward to the next generation.
So as far as the transition goes, I realize I'm not following Pete or Geri. I love them dearly and I wish the best for them, but I also trust Pete enough to know that he would not leave New Life unless he was really putting in the hands of someone that he felt that was responsible, that really cared about the church, and that had the values of Christ. With Rich, I'm hearing his preaching, and I believe that he has the character. So as he and his wife come aboard, I feel very confident, and I'm happy to know that they're here and that I can leave my kids knowing that they're going to get good teaching just as I did.
I'm excited about the future. I think Rich is going to build on what we've done and take the church forward in a new way, but yet building on the same values. And I'm just so glad to, participate with him in that.
It's a win-win for us that we get to move into a different role and use our age, our wisdom, our experience to bless and nurture and mentor the younger generation. And at the same time, New Life gets someone like Rich, and they get Red, and they get a wonderful staff team that together can bring pieces and strengthen New Life and bring her into the future in a way that we would not be able to.
I see the gifts of Rich and Reds and others, and I'm so excited because I feel like they're doing what needs to be done for the New Life Fellowship for the next phase.
When I think about the history of New Life and I think about Pete and Geri, I think these are two people that are passionate about Jesus and passionate about seeing people transformed. And the price that they paid over these years has been nothing short of remarkable, because to do what they've done have taken an immense amount of sacrifice. It has taken an immense amount of pain. It has taken an immense amount of suffering to do all the things that they've been doing all these years.
I am so privileged to have had the experience of walking into people's lives, people allowing me to be in their life, to be a part of their life, and to have a front row seat to their transformation, to help people live their one unrepeatable life. That has been very, very meaningful for me.
When you're being taught and you're learning and you're growing and you see your family change and you see yourself changing, why would you want to leave a place like that? So why am I here? I'm still growing. Even after 21 years, I'm evolving. It's affecting my parenting. It has affecting my marriage in wonderful, life-giving ways. That whatever I receive, I just give it back because I can't help to just share what God is doing for me in and through this church.
How can I repay the Lord for all of his goodness to me? It has been such a privilege and a gift to be here at New Life Fellowship. So I don't want to leave. My whole life has been dramatically transformed, as Geri said, by being with people from all over the world. Whether they're fleeing death squads, or civil wars, or famines, or immigration. People from all types of social classes and races and colors and stripes. The 75 different countries and more, I'm sure, over the years that I've passed through New Life have changed me. I'm not the same person. I wouldn't trade being the lead pastor at New Life Fellowship for these 26 years for anything in the world. It has been that much of a gift. God has met me, our marriage, and our family in such a profound way through these years. I consider myself one of the most blessed people on the face of the earth.